Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review comes from 1988, and it's Shame, from Australia, not Shame from Sweden, or the other 22 films called Shame according to Letterboxd. And if you add all the films called No Shame, there's close to 30 films that seem to be shame based. This is from Australia. This is Sunburnt Screens number 13, starring Deborah Lee Furness, or Mrs. Hugh Jackman. Tony Barry will probably be familiar to you as well. This edition has a new interview with Steve Jodrell, who directed it, Michael Brindley, Beverly Blankenship, Simone Buchanan and Paul Barron. There's a commentary with Steve Jodrell and Simone Buchanan and Michael Brindley. There's an oral history with Paul Harris and Steve Jodrell. There's original footage from the premiere of Shame. There's an interview with Deborah Lee Furness, who at one point was more famous than Hugh Jackman, certainly in Australia. So, as Steve Jodrell says, this is really a play on Shane. It's sort of a western. It's set in an Australian small town. A woman on a motorcycle, as opposed to a man on a horse, comes into town and sets about helping a family with a young daughter who has pretty much been sexually assaulted by one of the young bucks in the town, who is the son of the upper class woman who owns the biggest factory in the town, and basically essentially in real terms kind of owns the town, because most of the people work there. So this woman, played by Deborah Lee Furness, happens to be a barrister, or a lawyer, for those not familiar with the word barrister, and she's just driving around Australia on her motorbike. She has an accident, has to come into this small town to get it repaired, and obviously because she's a woman from the outside, she's automatically kind of targeted as someone that the men in the town want to have sex with, because they're so irresistible, and obviously she's not up for that. She does have a boyfriend, but she is taking a break and driving around Australia to clear her head. The men in the town are, perhaps you could argue, a little caricatured, but then Australian men don't have a great reputation anyway, as being kind of understanding towards the needs of women. This is made in 1988, the same year as The Accused, the slightly more famous film with Jodie Foster and Kelly McGillis. The police in the town, of course, are part of the establishment, and kind of have the embodiment of not being much help at all. And again, the women, or the young woman in this case, of course, isn't believed is kind of automatically tarred as being a slut, because again, that's the thing, if these kind of things happen, men can have sex with as many women as they like, but that's just lads being lads. Whereas if a woman has more than one sexual partner, then she's a slut, which isn't the case in this case. So there's lots of threats of violence, threats of sexual violence, that Deborah Lee Furness gives as good as she gets. I mean, she's cornered by three pretty much teenage boys, and she beats the shit out of them, and then goes to the police, and the police are going to charge her because one of them's got a sore head or something. So she ends up dropping it, and she ends up staying with this family who own the petrol station, and again the daughter, who's pretty much been sexually assaulted or raped by this son. The kind of gang of teenage boys, not necessarily teenage boys, but certainly 18 to 21 year old boys are wonderfully annoying. You'd quite happily see them beaten to death by kangaroos. The mother, who obviously doesn't want the kind of bad press, offers to pay the young girl off and her family off, which obviously just annoys Deborah Lee Furness even more. The film has a real kind of threat and a kind of air of threat. I mean, I was actually thinking, what Australian film actually shows Australia in a good light. Obviously you've got Wake and Fright, Wolf Creek, Walkabout, Picnic at Hanging Rock. These are not films that necessarily show Australia in a good light. It's, again, films like this is another reason not to go to Australia, apart from the heat and the underlying racism and misogyny, and crocodiles, sharks, spiders and snakes. There's not a lot of films that are kind of sponsored by the Australian Tourist Board, and Shame isn't another one, or is another one, sorry, that doesn't really make you want to go to Australia. It's full of wonderful performances. Again, the villains of the piece make you want to lock them in a room with several rabid kangaroos, as I said. But again, it's just this air of women are there to be leered at, women are there to be used. If they don't go for it, then they're labelled as something else. And a really kind of chilling scene as some of the girls of the town, after some of the kind of violence has kicked off, it's Saturday night, the only place to go is kind of the pub and the dance hall, and there's three girls that are going in, and of course the guys are like, "Oh, you're not coming with us," and of course they're saying no. But then the camera kind of slowly pans and then introduces even younger girls who are quite happy to go with these guys, even though the older girls are kind of getting sick of their antics. There's still younger girls that are quite prepared to go with the cool boys, even though the cool boys are basically sexually assaulting the girls. And then it gets to the point where the violence just completely spills over, but the film doesn't shy away from brutality. It doesn't shy away from what does happen with mob culture. There are victims, there are casualties, there are collateral damage. Nothing's clean. There's not necessarily a sense of hope at the end of the film, because no doubt things will get covered up and written a certain way. The main police officer, who you think is slowly coming round to the fact that maybe there is a problem in the community with the men in the community, but then near the end of the film, when something terrible happens, the police officer comes out with just the most bizarre statement, accusing Deborah Lee Furness. So it's not a film with nice resolution. It's an ugly film in the sense of it kind of shows the truth of these events. People say, oh, I'll come forward and testify, so you're not on your own, but then, pressures happen, so therefore that doesn't necessarily come to fruition. Great performances. The film looks really good. As I said, the filmmakers themselves, do acknowledge Shane. I would say it's better than Shane. And it is kind of, as I said, it's shot like a western. The family that Deborah Lee Furness helps are in the petrol station at the edge of town, just like a ranch at the edge of town. So there's already that isolation. Again, there's wonderful moments where Deborah Lee Furness's character is trying to show the young girl, are you tough enough once I leave to stand up for yourself? And she teaches her how to kick a man or knee a man in the genitals. But then the young girl goes, well, what if there's 6 of them? And Deborah Lee Furness just kind of says, well, I don't know. There's no heroic answer to that, because they kind of just know the truth of that. Also, this is made in 1988, and of course now in 2024 we don't have these social problems where women are scared to go out on their own for fear of sexual violence. We don't have that in society anymore, so you can't look at this as a historical document. If only. There's a reason why so many films in the past are still relevant, because we still haven't eradicated these problems. Obviously I'm poking a little bit of fun at Australia, but it's not just Australia, but certainly Australia is known for not necessarily inventing toxic masculinity, but certainly having that environment. So again, there's no easy answers provided in the film, but it has a wonderful horrible atmosphere. You can almost feel the tension in the film. Jodrell never really made anything else of note. There's a couple of films that he made, but looking at Letterboxd, not that matters or anything, but looking at Letterboxd, there's a lots of 1 stars. So this was maybe just his moment. Another wonderful reason not to go to Australia. Shame from 1988. So thanks so much for watching this random review. Please let me know if you've seen Shame, or how many of the 24 different films called Shame you have seen, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.